So, Mr. Hirayama is the main protagonist in the film Perfect Days. He works as a janitor in Tokyo, and the film takes us through his simple way of living. And in this commentary, rather than speaking about his minimalism lifestyle, which I think a lot of other students have taken upon themselves to talk about, I think that I'm much more intrigued by his indifference attitude, or ignorance, or perhaps you can call it acceptance towards the judgment of people around him. Since I don't think that it's a stretch to say that the average person views the act of cleaning toilets to be a low-class job, and even for most, it's even considered as the worst thing anyone can do for a living, to clean other people's excrement for a living. And I think that we subconsciously label people who are in that line of work to be incompetent in not being able to get a real job. They'd have to settle for what there is left, and in this case, it's being a janitor. This point made its existence apparent in two scenes of the film, I believe. The first one was when Mr. Hirayama's niece took a video of him cleaning toilets, which sparked the second scene where, I think that it was disappointment, where the sister came to Mr. Hirayama's house to pick up her daughter, and while waiting for her daughter to get her stuff from inside the house, she asked Mr. Hirayama if he's really cleaning toilets. As if it was such an unbelievable thing to do, especially for someone like him, her brother. And I personally think that this question was a trick question, since logically I don't think that there is a right answer to it. In most cases, people who say yes would say it with a shameful tone, as if it was a confession of guilt, and if he had said no, then he would be lying to himself, which would prove more that he was shameful of his life. So I grew frustrated, or at least upset at the sister for asking him such a question. But Mr. Hirayama did neither of that. Instead of showing shame, he stayed silent, smiled, and then nodded. He was happy. And that caught me off guard, since why would he be happy for? Well, it was at that moment where I realized that I was being unfair. I gave him an expectation to feel the same feeling that I'm feeling, and I think that that's what the sister was doing also. She was disappointed at him, and she expected for him to feel the same feeling that she's feeling, and when she was proven wrong, she was dumbfounded. Just like me, she was unable to say anything. And this was reinforced by the scene that took place below the bridge, where it showed that Mr. Hirayama was playing shadow tag with the restaurant owner's ex-husband, having fun despite all the hardships that he just went through, with Takahashi leaving his job, leaving Mr. Hirayama having to do more work, his niece leaving, and his, some might say, possible love interest getting caught being intimate with her past lover. It's easy to imagine oneself to indulge in self-loathing, like, oh my god, how miserable my life is, but not Mr. Hirayama. Instead, he shared his beer with his new acquaintance, and then they played. They smiled, laughed, and again, he was happy. Some might call it ego or selfishness, the same as how some might call it self-love, since in putting sufferings to the side, you are forced to move forward and realize that, things are still the same. No matter if it's with indifference or acceptance, the sun will still rise tomorrow. No matter if it's with self-loathing or self-love, you still have to go to your job. No matter if you're sad or happy, you're still alive. And you could choose to go through your day feeling miserable or feeling content. And in Mr. Hirayama's case, he chose the latter. It's a matter of perspective. For me, the days he went through was disturbing. To live in repetition, to postpone what could be events, to take it slow. But for him, one could imagine that those days must have been his Perfect Days.